As we've discussed already this evening, Climate 200 are on the hunt in Sydney in the state seats they won federally last year. 5 targets you can see on the map here. Lane Cove, Manly, North Shore among them. Joining us live now from the seat of North Shore is Climate 200 founder Simon Holmes of Court. Simon, thank you for your time. You helped 6 Teals beat Liberals last year federally, but then none of the Victorian candidates were successful in November at the state election. How do you feel tonight? How do you think you'll go?
Well, it's really hard one to call. This is the first outing for the community independence movement at the New South Wales state election, so we don't have any data to go on, anything to compare. We don't yet know the impact of optional preferential voting. There's obviously been a big campaign to try to encourage people to number every box, but New South Wales is the only state in the country that has this optional preferential voting, and we really don't know what kind of impact that's going to have. It's also quite an unlevel playing field. In New South Wales, the major party campaigns are largely taxpayer-funded, where the independents have had to build their war chests up in small donations one at a time. So our financial input into this campaign has been much lower than the federal election. But I was out on the hustings today, visited 2 campaigns, Victoria Davidson in Lane Cove and Helen Conway in North Shore. Both of them had a real spring in their step. Volunteers were smiling, and they felt great that they had taken these seats to be a 2-horse race for the first time. These seats aren't being overlooked, not being taken for granted, and they're really happy about that.
There's been some controversy about the Climate 200 mailouts this election. I know your candidates previously, certainly at the federal level, talking about integrity and changing politics, but in North Shore, for example, the mailouts described Felicity Wilson as Duplicity Wilson. Zali Steggall said it was very disappointing to see Climate 200 turn to fear and smear. What's your reaction to that?
So firstly, we want to correct it. They're not our candidates; they're community candidates that invited us to give them support in the campaigns, and we have given them support. Look, in that particular case in North Shore, we had the incumbent had been caught out lying on a statutory declaration, and we thought it was really important for the community to know who they are voting for. So for the first time, these seats are 2-horse races. For the first time that we see that there's a democratic revival in these seats, and we think that's a really good thing for democracy, that people are coming out and getting involved, that the community is actually seeing that politics is something they can do, that they're welcome, and we're really happy to support communities to take on these challenges.
You say they're not your candidates, though. We've had various people, including on our panel tonight, say that Climate 200 does and looks very much like a political party. You're wearing their Helen Conway shirt tonight. What's different between the way you operate in a party?
So we don't receive any government funding. The major parties will receive about $11 million in funding for their campaigns. They receive administrative funding. We don't choose candidates. We don't select any policy. This is very, very, very different from a political party where there is a very tight responsibility between a candidate and the party. We don't operate like that. The community is, in this case, chosen Helen Conway to represent them, and then they've come and asked us for help, and we've made a donation to their campaign, limited to $3,300, which is about half what can be given to parties.
Finally, it's a big night ahead. I want to ask you, been a big story in the last couple of months federally, Kooyong and Monique Ryan, who you were obviously supporting that campaign, has had some issues with her chief of staff. Are you concerned this might help the former treasurer, Mr. Frydenberg, return there in Kooyong?
I think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup. It's obviously frustrating to see to see a breakdown in that relationship, but I don't think it will actually affect Monique Ryan in the long term. I think it has given Frydenberg a spring in his stride. I hear he's been texting people all over the country, sounding them out. But look, I think he got a pretty strong message at the last election that he wasn't the man, wasn't the candidate, right person for Kooyong. And then Monique Ryan had 2,000 donors, 2,000 volunteers and about 2,000 donors. And if Josh was to re-enter that race, I think we'd see double the number of volunteers and double the number of donors. It would actually make it easier to campaign.